genuinely love Carnival. The joy of reconnecting with my ancestors and embracing the common connection across cultures is incredibly freeing. This June, I had the opportunity to experience two wonderful carnivals in Columbus, South Carolina, and Charleston, South Carolina, both of which celebrated Bahamas during their respective events. In Columbia, South Carolina, the talented Bodine Victoria represented our islands with a distinct Bahamian sound that was truly mesmerizing. In Charleston, South Carolina, Carifest went all out for 3 days dedicated to celebrating everything Bahamian related, from its shared cultural experiences to hosting His Excellency, Sir Wendell Jones, as an added treat. It's no wonder why Carnival has become so popular, and it's simply so magical. Hats off to Charleston, South Carolina for embracing us during our Golden Jubilee Independence Year.
The Bahamian English dialect, Creole, is as close to Gullah as any of the other Caribbean Creoles. Lots of the language is exactly the same. Visitors from South Carolina who go to Bahamas and vice versa find themselves talking the same language, which is amazing. And for some of you may not know this, but Bahamas was actually part of the Lord's Proprietor's gift from an earlier King Charles II. And you have to think about the incredible, outrageous arrogance of that there was King Charles in England giving this land of the Carolinas and the Bahamas to 7 Lords Proprietors in 1670. And that also makes us, I think, aware that we also need to make proper land acknowledgement, because this was obviously not King Charles's land to give.
We gained independence coming in underdeveloped, with social issues, and with an educational system that was backward. And so this is why we have a relationship with our Caribbean neighbors, because we came into independence with the same challenges that they have faced and that we're still dealing with. And so that is another connection. And then the third and final one I'll make is festive cultures. Every single Caribbean island has a festive culture, whether it be crop over or Carnival, Barbados and Trinidad, notably for those two. But even in Jamaica, they have Sunshine Festival. They also have a John Canoe Festival that's not as wide known or nationally recognized like our John Canoe, but it is still a festival. And you see John Canoe, by the way, in the diaspora in places like Belize, and you see even in Norfolk, Virginia, and in places that we might not think is common to John Canoe, but it's there, British Honduras, etc. So the point I'm making, though, is every Caribbean society has a festive culture, and we do as well. There's no argument outside of the location of the Bahamas that tells me we are not a part of the Caribbean.
Please speak to the significance of John Canoe, a little bit about the history, because I think that so often we don't excavate the subversive histories, often the resistance histories that are often associated with that festive culture. We see it now often commodified, but there's also this way that I just really appreciate how John Canoe has remained so incredibly true to its roots. When I think about John Canoe shacks, and the fact that every single piece of crepe paper is being assembled, being designed by human beings. Just speak a little to both that history to whatever extent it feels appropriate, but then also to the important, why John Canoe remains such an important cultural festival, but in some ways a pillar. So yes, start with us there.
John Canoe has evolved.
Yes.
It evolved over the years, and the centrality of John Canoe is really the beat of the drum. The drum. Kaboom, 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 kaboom. It's like the beat of the heart. And the soul of the Bahamas is really found in John Canoe. Someone told me that if you listen to your own heartbeat, you would have an appreciation of the sound of the drum. And so from the African tradition, we have the sound of Junkanoo. But it has evolved over the years. It is an import from Africa, from our ancestry, our roots in West Africa. And we remember when Junkanoo was not crepe paper, but was rags and sponge and newspaper that was cut up, and people went out in various costumes made up of newspaper and sponge and leaves and all the rest of it. From the 1950s, the late 1950s to now, you see the evolution of Junkanoo, and the Junkanoo leaders, because of their education, because of their exposure, they were able to become very creative. There is a little from the Trinidad festival now with feathers. So it's more than just crepe paper today. Months ago it was just a shirt and pants kind of thing. Today they are building costumes using it's a three-dimensional kind of thing, where they're not only using crepe paper, but they're using styrofoam and wire and all sorts of things. And they can build anything and take anything to Bay Street. Whether it's a bird, whether it's a plane, all right? They can build a man, right? And they can dress it up and take it to Bay Street. What we have not done as well as we should is to internationalize Junkanoo. As the Jamaicans have internationalized reggae, we in the Bahamas need to do a better job in marketing Junkanoo. I know that in many states in the United States, when we have our activities, we can get a Junkanoo group from Virginia or from New York or from Atlanta to perform. And today, let me add that in addition to going on Bay Street on Boxing Day and New Year's Day, you find that you can have Junkanoo performances at weddings and funerals, all right, at parties, at any celebration. So it has become an industry. The Junkanoo in the Bahamas has evolved into an industry, and it is very profitable for a whole lot of Junkanooers, because you have young men today, they don't rush on Bay Street, but they are paid to paste and to build costumes for those who wish to rush on Bay Street.
I want to talk about the subversive element of Junkanoo in its original state and how it's changed. Junkanoo came to the Bahamas about a century earlier than we had thought. 1720s now, the recent research by Chris Davis in his book, Black Rinse, points this out. Hunters were coming into the Bahamas on the first major shipment of enslaved persons from the area of Bohosi and Princess Town in what is now modern-day Ghana. But think about this, within 2 years, by 1723, the first slave codes in the Bahamas distinctly state that you cannot, as an enslaved person, meet at night in groups of 5 or 6. Beating music, playing on a drum, all of that was prohibited. What does that tell me? It tells me that's what they was already doing, right? And it tells me that from the start, Junkanoo was always a countercultural expression of resistance, right? That this is what I can't do, guess what, I'm going to do it anyways. And preserving in their own way their African heritage, the drumming that Ambassador spoke about. But guess what? Enslavement was a system, but it wasn't who you were. And so they found themselves and their humanity through Junkanoo. And so after slavery is abolished, and you have the whole issue of civil rights being denied, and you still don't have political rights, the ability to vote, the ability to own property per se, and all of that. That is why they defied a whole other quiet revolution to bring that about. But the point is this, they still demonstrated, and here's the way that they demonstrated. The very space of power was Bay Street. And guess what? The Bay Street boys controlled the political, social, and economic system of the day. So where is the one place you want to go to show in a defiant and subversive way your power? Bay Street. So Junkanoo takes place on that space, and there's something called misrule. The anthropologist is Cohen. And Nicolette Bethel has developed this a little further to show how you give people, and this is also a hegemonic principle, Antonio Gramsci, the Marxist philosopher, talks about this idea that you give people a space to take over in a sense and diffuse the real tension in society while you maintain a longer period of oppression and hegemony by taking that space back. And that's exactly what the Bay Street Boys did. They allowed them to have the space, to party at night, and the next day, of course, business as usual. But then somehow along the way, by the 1920s and 30s, they started to realize, guess what? People actually enjoy this festival. And guess what? Stafford Sands and the UBP started to realize we could make some money from this. So it went from being subversive to being permissible, to being allowed, to being acknowledged, to being accepted. And so by the 1950s, and so, by the way, it was banned for a few years after the Burma Road riot.
I was going to say.
Yes, it got banned, but then they brought it back. By the time they brought it back, all of a sudden the Development Board, which Stafford Sands chaired before it became the Ministry of Tourism, was in support of it. Then they started to actually, market it or present it as something fashionable. Now we're at a point, and this is again tracking its change. Ambassador fantastically spoke about the costume change, but there is also a change in how it's perceived and embraced, because now Junkanoo is the quintessential expression of Bahamian culture.
It's like Carnival.
Yes, it is. And so we have come to a place where it's enjoyed on all of the islands, and it's enjoyed by persons of all hues and colors. It's fantastic to note that from my own, I grew up in Nassau, but my dad's family is from Spanish Wells. A few years ago, the all-age school in Spanish Wells won the Junior Junkanoo Parade. Could you imagine that?
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Shaking someone, this is the way it sounds. to my family.
Where you from? Where you from?
I'm from here.
What?
Charleston, South Carolina.
All right, so, all right. All right, you could you record this for him? Okay. You ready? You sure you ready? You got this. You can beat contestant number 3. You got this. All right, here you go.
Hold your head and hold your ears and hold your nose and hold your mouth and hold your neck and hold your shoulders, hold your chest and show me the rest. Your ankle and touch your shake and touch your knees and touch your thighs and touch your waist and grab your bottom and
The aquamarine, it represents the waters of the Bahamas. The gold represents the brilliant sunshine that is almost year-round in the Bahamas. And the black represents the strength of the Bahamian people. And I'm so happy to see so many Bahamians here this evening. They have come from far. Some drove for a day, some 4 and 5 hours just to be here to celebrate this particular event. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bahamas is a country in progress. We are perhaps one of the leading countries, not only in the Caribbean, but in the Americas. We are well governed, and I'm so proud to be here today to bring greetings on behalf of Prime Minister Philip Davis, his government, and the people of the Bahamas. The astronauts, when they went up, they looked down and they saw the Bahamas as the most beautiful place on earth. The most beautiful place on earth. And in the exhumers, where Consul General Morse is from, the most beautiful waters in the world. And so, Carolinas, you have a whole lot to be grateful for. Those of you who are Bahamians or who are descendants of the Bahamas, you ought to feel extremely proud that you are a part of one of the most beautiful countries in this universe.
Even when
this one. Y'all ready? Here we go, here we go! There she is. Pick it up, pick it up, pick it up. Oh, always out there, still